Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Pop Culture Minefield and Friends. And we are doing a very special episode as part of the all of our friends on YouTube, including Polly, Gorgon. Who are all of the people involved with this one, Pat?
Yeah, if you don't mind me saying, sure. Yeah, we started actually more than 2 weeks ago when Purple Valkyrie had us on a
That
pre-show
was
with
it,
Google
Purple.
13, and she did a great job kicking us off. And then we had our first night with Loki from Loki's Mornings of Mischief. That 70s rock fan was on that first one. So was Dave Bob, who's been with us either on or in the chat the whole time. So he's been great. We had the amazing Vito. Matt from Foulball Productions was both on with Loki from Latino Slant and did an episode with Just Another Red Shirt, who did a couple of episodes with us. Gosh, who am I forgetting? That now you got, of course, I said Gogol 13. Oh, Snow Dub joined us.
Yeah, Snow Dub. That's right. I forgot about
And hung out with us on a Friday night, which was pretty awesome. Purple did an episode of her own. She was in love with episode 6, and Eugene Rowe is her favorite character, so she did that. Yeah, she did that episode for us.
Echo Base TV.
Echo Base, yes. Nick from Echo Base TV did it with us. Mike, Mexican Iron Man, did the very first stream, and let's give a shout out to him. He's either in the air somewhere.
Yeah, he was supposed to be here. He's one of he's Pop Culture Minefield's main executive producer. He does so much for us, and I'm so upset that he's probably in the air right now in his flight, so he couldn't be here. And of course, Keith wanted to be here, but his brother took ill, and he's not here. Sadly, he wasn't here for our earlier show either. I'm praying for his brother, so we'll see what happens. And I was really looking forward to Julia meeting him, but as I refer to him, my better half. But Julia, for those of you who don't know, is part of the leadership of Warriors Incorporated. They are the folks behind, I'll go through the list of Platoon, Starship Troopers, Alexander, Band of Brothers, The Pacific, Saving Private Ryan. They've worked on films. Oh, like one of my favorites was Sam Jackson, Tommy Lee Jones. Oh my God, I just forgot the name.
Rules of Engagement?
Rules of Engagement. I fucking love that movie.
Tom Clancy?
Just a huge fan.
Right.
And I happen to work for this lady, and she also happens to be one of my closest friends. And yeah, we sit and talk for hours sometimes on the phone. It's ridiculous. Just like two old ladies gabbing.
I love Bago.
And but Julia has this amazing talent and knowledge, and being part of this thing with Dale and helping build it to what it is today, and of course branching off and making Warriors Publishing, which of course, you know, I'm the official artist for Warriors Publishing. So
we only want the best.
But it's so I've wanted to have you on the show for a while. I've talked to you for 2 years about being on the show, you and Dale, and I'm like, well, Dale's not available. I don't care. I want to have you on because you, I know, have a lot of stories of working on these things, and your expertise has led to the perfection of some of these shows, including the Pacific. And the Pacific is the one you get credit for, but you don't get credit for Band of Brothers, even though I know you were there helping.
Well, I had several hats on while this was filming. I was also co-directing a stunt show in Japan at the time. I was having to do the admin for Warriors. So I worked for Warriors while Warriors worked on Band of Brothers. What they choose to make official credits and non-official credits is what it is.
Yeah, I always noticed that your name is not listed, and it bugged me.
Parts of it, but it's a little bit different than I would if I was not on set all the time. It's always challenging too because, you know, I was there in Bastogne with the nurse and Doc Rowe. When there's not female characters, it's usually harder to convince the production that it's necessary for me to be on set. But that's changed.
Well, that sounds sexist.
It is what it is. It's
War
movies tend to be white guys shooting each other.
Yeah.
It is hard to be politically correct.
Oh, wait, are we talking about Alec Baldwin now?
Oh.
But we're changing that.
But I do want to thank Matt and Pat. Yeah, Matt and Pat for stepping in for Keith tonight. And I'm really grateful for you guys to help host me. Because once again, we have shitty internet here. And if I drop out, I expect you two to carry the fucking show.
Do our best.
There we go.
No pressure.
Yeah,
no pressure.
Matt's a professional YouTuber. We'll be fine.
I'll try.
But, hold on a second. Come in.
I just heard you being a misogynistic pig.
I'm being a misogynistic pig. This is my wife, Deanna. I don't know if you can see her because I have the filter thing. There she is. There's Julia.
Hi, Julia.
Hi.
So she just dropped in to listen to what the fuck I'm talking about for some reason. I'm saying misogynist stuff. She cares. But tonight's episode was episode 10, Points, which is the final episode of the series. And it's the get your breath or catch your breath or get your wind episode. It's where you've just watched 9 episodes of intense fucking shit. And then finally you have the cool down episode. And despite it being a cool down episode, it is one of the single most emotional episodes of the series. And has some of the most poignant moments and tragic of the entire series. And of course, you know, I want to talk about it because Neil McDonough isn't in there for a while.
Mm-mm.
Right.
And
He's in like the last
like
scene,
one of
I
my
think.
favorite freaking actors of all time.
He's a
I saw
delightful
him
guy,
in
too.
Disney's
Just one of my
Angels
favorite
in the
people.
Outfield. And I instantly became a fan of this guy. Who the fuck is this blonde-haired dude with blue eyes that just grins like a child? I freaking love that guy. And I was so excited to find out that he was one of your the Warrior Inc. vets, you know, that he got to do the training with you guys.
He's delightful. I mean, it was such a save to have him there for the end of Points because, you know, we had a lot of British actors and he and Dale were the only two that knew how to play baseball. And the guys are all like throwing little cricket balls and it just...
Yeah, and the guy that, what is his name? Dexter Fletcher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was
He's
the one on the
British.
pitcher's mound and he kept throwing it like cricket. And it was annoying me. So I noticed that they tried to cut into close-ups so you couldn't see his arm.
That's why you know, Buck was the catcher because outside of the pitcher, the catcher is the most important role. But he, in theory, shouldn't have even been there. His character, you know, had already left Easy Company, so we were just fortunate that he managed to show up in Switzerland and play some ball.
Yeah, exactly. Curtis says, seeing the castle on the hill as evil as a place. Hold on, leave that up there, dickhead. God damn it, Kyle.
Okay.
Looks so cool. I want to see it personally, but I don't know if it's still standing. It is not. It was destroyed. Much of Hitler's stuff was destroyed, as I recall.
The Eagle's Nest, that kind of
the Eagle's Nest. Right, Julia? Wasn't it destroyed?
Well, a lot of Berchtesgaden is still there and is a restaurant that you can go into. Not everything is gone.
I know that his palace is
stronghold.
That palatial house that was there is blocked off. You're not allowed to go to it because they don't want neo-Nazis turning it into a shrine. But yeah, having Neil McDonough there at the end was really good. And Pat, you had something to add to that, didn't you, about Buck?
Oh yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. Buck Compton the real Buck Compton played a lot of baseball and really actually caught. He was a catcher, and actually got a chance to play minor league ball. He got an offer to play minor league ball and maybe even have a chance to go to the majors, and he didn't because he decided that he wanted to go to law school. And just like they said, he became a prosecutor for L.A. County and did all those famous things. But he also was one of the very first commissioned officers in the Jet Corps in the Air Force. when the Air Force was newly started back in 47, he decided to go into the reserves and I think served like a ridiculous amount of time. I think he did like another 26 years or something like that.
Wow.
With them. So yeah, the real life Buck Compton was a baseball player. So it's interesting that Neil there could play ball too, because it's very apropos.
Yeah, that's what
And
got
very honored for the cat. Yeah,
he knew how to play.
yeah.
And one thing since we're on the subject of him, some of his expressions are so much like Dale's of a generation earlier. I would love somebody to cast the two of them as father and son. Because their eyes,
or maybe
shape,
somebody
their
should make a
expressions.
docu-film about Dale and cast him as Dale. Just saying, I wouldn't mind working on that script.
Your lipstick in his ears.
Here we are. We got our chat going. We have Deleted Scene. Thanks for being here, my friend. Das Wolfen. Who else is here? Lord Thoth is here. Foulball's here on the show too. Dave Bob is here. What is up? Pat is also in the chat. Parrothead, my friend. This guy sends me the most pornographic fucking memes in private chat. I fucking love the dude. He'll crack me up, sending me the most fucked up shit. Let's see who else here. Curtis, of course, is here. KF204 Fox, and Martin Acosta Santana, my friend, and GoGo 13. Thanks for showing up, man. Love you guys. Glad you're here. We have a very dedicated audience. Hopefully, they'll all trail in. We'll see. But is this, do you have any stories about the production on that episode that you'd like to talk about, Julia?
Well, let's see. I got my baseball story. I think one of them is just the swimming was a thing. It was, filmed in Switzerland in the mountains, and it was really, really cold. And the production was pretty freaked out about Damien diving into the water over and over again. But he loved it. He wanted to swim every day.
Yeah, it's a beautiful scene. My favorite moment is when Nixon jumps in.
Of course.
In full, uniform.
He's awesome.
I'm like, that shit was funny. Yeah,
I was thinking that when I was watching
I'm a big
I'm like,
fan of his too.
Oh, Ron Livingston rules. But I was looking at that. I'm like, that water looks cold. That doesn't look.
It's cold. It was
yeah.
cold.
Oh, you're right. It's a mountain. It has to be right.
Yeah.
The one thing that we did when the series came out on HBO that was really neat was every week we would go to another actor's house and watch together.
Oh, that's so cool.
Who was in town that worked on the show. And I remember watching Nixon's episode sitting between Ron Livingston and Grace, Nixon's wife, watching her husband on screen. And it was, your heart could just explode. And she just couldn't believe how perfect Livingston had gotten her husband.
Oh,
that's
man,
really
that's
nice.
Wow. He's
great. He's such a memorable character, Nixon, and he's got a pretty interesting arc in this episode too. Mm-hmm. With just like going through like his alcoholic woes, but also the fact that people keep dying, and he's kind of not responsible for it, but he survives a stick getting blown up, and it's just like it's eating him up, and he's just had enough of it, and it's falling apart. But then, there's still the camaraderie. What's his name? Winter's like guidance and leadership still there for him and helps him through it, and then gives him that great gift at the end or towards the end.
Right.
And
and he offers him a job. He's not trying to pull away from the experience. He's still holding on to at least the relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so nice to know that he did go to work for his family.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they were all. I think they didn't show it as much with Spears, but Welsh, Winters, Nixon, and Spears especially, and Carlwood Lipton once he was well again. He had really bad pneumonia and all, but by the time they were at Birkenstock and all, they had really all become really good pals, and not just because of Winters, who really kept everybody together. Right, he has tons of correspondence that the book and the miniseries was based on. But those guys were all really fast friends and stayed in contact with each other almost naturally, even well after the war for many, many years, decades, really.
And what was so lovely is they embraced us as part of that. Babe Heffron was in the hospital one of the Sundays we were watching an episode, and we all sang. I did a video singing Danny Boy to him, and then there he is in his hospital bed crying. I mean, it just, and the relationship between him and Garnier. I mean, they allowed us to sort of become a bigger part of that family, which was awesome of them. They didn't need to do that at all.
Yeah, and that's so cool. And Julie, I had read early on when we were looking at some of the background for this stuff a month or two ago, how the beloved character, right, played by Wahlberg, but it's the real life guy too, right? What was Linwood's last? Yeah, the
Carwood.
Yeah, Sergeant Lipton became a lieutenant. Yeah, how in real life he made it through the production, got to go to the Emmys and stuff. He was one of the guys that were there, but it was only a few months later, right? Like not even 6 months later, after all this had kind of wound down, that he did pass away, almost a little suddenly. And I was sad to see that, but I was kind of like, wow, how cool! Like his last year of his life was getting to meet all these people, and Donnie Wahlberg and he really liked each other, and they probably would have been friends for years and years. Not unlike how Scott Grimes and the real life Donald Malarkey were. They were really fast friends for 20 years after this, almost, right? I mean, a good 15 until he passed. That's incredible. I mean,
it's that way across the board. And if it's not the person, it's the family. We still hear from Sink's family all the time.
Wow,
I'm sure.
That's amazing.
It's really awesome. And one of the things we try to do, since we're talking about the people versus the actors, we do our best when teaching these guys to hook that together for them, because that's how they can bring that to their acting roles. So, for example, in this episode, Shifty Powers had gone to Dale because he wasn't sure how he was supposed to play the points, that he's gonna leave and everybody else was gonna stay behind. How would that feel? And Dale just said, well, how do you feel about leaving this production when this ends? And you're not going to see these people every day anymore. And he went, he said, that's how they felt. So take what you're feeling as an actor and use it and how you're feeling as that, guy. So it's interesting to see how those connections happen, even in circumstance.
It's really interesting that your husband has got this collected knowledge and insight and expertise, but also really does have the instrument of an actor. Like that's great advice. Like that's great direction that he just gave him.
He's wonderful at that, and what he is, both in the military and in show business and anywhere else, he is a storyteller. He knows how to effectively tell stories. And to do that, you need to connect emotionally, right? And he's so good at that. Even on the Pacific, the guy who was playing Chesty Puller was upset in boot camp because he couldn't figure out why Captain Dye hated the Army so much. And I remember talking to him, and it was like, did you see Band of Brothers? Did you see Saving Private Ryan? Do you think those are from people who hate the Army? Well, no. It's like, well, Chesty Puller at this point in his life hated the Army because he got everything and the Marines got nothing. And they saw that in the Pacific. He's showing you how you feel. You don't know Dale. You have no idea what he thinks about anything. You know Captain Dye, and he's teaching you right now. And that he does that better than anyone else.
Yeah, the Marine Corps for just too long got the hand-me-downs.
Yeah.
When it came to supplies. I mean, during the Vietnam War, many of them were wearing armor that was from the 50s.
Oh, absolutely. My father loves to tell how he was a big guy, right? He was 6'2" when he went into the Marine Corps, and he trained with the BAR, the BAR, right? And he was cleaning it and fooling with it all, and he realizes the stamp on it. He's like, "Oh, this was like from World War One. This is like one of the ones that was actually in World War One." And it wasn't just happenstance; they were built that right. It's a Browning rifle. It's an amazing weapon, but just the fact that you're still training with it, right? That to him, he just thought that was the funniest thing in the world. That not only is this thing built to last, but wow, really? I guess it is true about the Marine Corps. We really do get like the leftovers and stuff. And
Well, I
yeah,
don't know if it's I don't know what it's like in modern day Marine Corps, but I mean in that miniseries Generation Kill, that was a pretty significant portion of it, where they're basically their Humvees aren't even properly armored for the invasion. Like they can't get the tubes they need, and they actually that's why they ended up kept using the reporter to like get supplies in, get mailed in, because they couldn't get the supplies they needed to invade a country.
Right.
So I don't think that much has changed.
No, it hasn't, and that's partly because of the structure. Because since the Marine Corps doesn't have it, it's part of the Department of the Navy. I mean, the Army's got the Department of the Army and their budget, and they get their stuff. The Marine Corps gets the stuff when the Navy's done funding the Navy. And then they say, well, we got a little bit left over, you can have it, Marine Corps. Because their, priorities always, the Coast Guard has the same kind of issue to some extent, depending on who's their boss on any given day. But because of how that's been structured, it's the way it goes. And I mean, Dale tells a story about Vietnam. They went into this laundry tent they found. It was like an army laundry tent, and they were in rags, tattered uniforms. And they just walked in there and put on 6 layers of uniforms and put their rags on top and walked out. That's acquiring from the Army.
Hey, look,
a time-honored tradition.
Yeah, it's still even in the Army, it's like we were constantly stealing shit from other companies, just taking it, and then it's like, you left your locker unlocked, dude. You're everything we can walk out with is going with us. But going back to the show, there was a lot going on in the series, from Bastogne to, D-Day, all of that. Were you there for any of the training on that with the actors?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
No, because there were no females involved in training.
Gotcha.
It is all of the training that we do is to immerse them into what it would have been like for those guys. Especially
for that period, right?
And so it's always period correct as much as possible.
I was watching the making of the behind the scenes the HBO put out for that, and one of the actors, I forgot, it's one of the characters that perishes, but he says like the first day he's sitting in his bunk, he's like, I'm not going to make 10 days of this. 16-hour days. I can't do this. How am I going to survive?
Yeah.
And yet they did.
And it's a lot less than the guys had to do on the day, but at least you can get a sense of it. The thing is, today, it used to be that a lot of actors were veterans, and that's much fewer now. We don't really have citizen soldiers. We have a military caste that's this 1% of people over there, and young actors generally don't come from that background. So especially when you're dealing with new recruits who have to be young enough, they have no frame of reference. So you've got to put them in there to give them something that they can touch onto and get some kind of sense of what it feels like. Guess what? There are people we've had in training who are 20 years old and has never in their entire life not slept on a bed. Never. I mean, they don't understand that uncomfortable doesn't kill you.
Right. And that you can survive it.
Yeah. So it's amazing. And what's so powerful about it is how it changes them on the other end. The actors don't want to sit in their trailers. They want to sit in the ground with the troops. They don't want the fluffy things that they were used to getting, because when you are 20 years old and you are getting money and women and parties and all sorts of stuff because you're an actor,
right?
You don't know what you did to earn that.
Right.
What is that? It's not very tangible. And because of that, there's an insecurity because it could be taken away because you don't know what it is.
Sure.
After
and from
one of Captain Dye's boot camps, you know what you did. You know you earned it. And it changes it forever for them.
And I love that that one magazine referred to him as Hollywood's drill sergeant.
Is it true that he and the production company kept the gentleman who played Sobel, who was David Schwimmer from Friends, everybody knows him for that, kind of kept him separate, and that he was fed differently, and sometimes he was even fed a little bit better, and where everybody else might be sitting on the ground eating, that day he got to go sit at a table, and he was very aware of it, right? He complied, but he kind of knew, like, okay, I see what's going on here. Are those stories exaggerated, or is that pretty much true?
No, that's true. You do what you can to set up the situation that will give them the emotional tools to understand what that feels like. Another example, like Matt Damon wanted to go to boot camp in Saving Private Ryan, and Dale was like, absolutely not. He cannot go because he can't bond with these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know, they have to resent him, and they have to have this conflict of, why are we saving this one guy? So it's certainly set up that way. There's usually a CP, and officers are different. I think the fun one is how many different times Tom Hanks has worked with us. And from, like, I guess probably Forrest Gump would be the first time he was a soldier with us. And so he is a grunt, right. Lowest level, right? And then he comes along, and then he's a sergeant, then he's a captain, then he's this, all the way along, and he keeps getting promoted within the unit. You're just leading it now. You just run your camp. So he's climbed up through the ranks.
That's funny. There's a scene in there's a movie that came out called The Outpost. I don't know if you know anything about that. It was a Netflix release. I thought it was tremendous.
I'm friends with Rod Lurie, and we've had him on twice now.
Oh, that's cool.
Outstanding film.
I consider it the best war film of the last 10 years.
Yeah, easily. It's a masterpiece. But there's Orlando Bloom is in it, and I thought it was kind of funny because he was like a private back in Black Hawk Down.
Yeah,
and I was like, he's like a captain or whatever, and I was like, oh, he got promoted. That's good. Like, his career's coming along. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Oh wait, we have a new comment. The Pacific impacted me so much that I had dreams of being there with John Bassilone's unit, or Basilone.
Oh. Good thing you weren't, Rusty. That was a pretty tough road to hoe.
I was going to say, that was not the... Pacific was the one. Oh, it's just to tie in the Pacific to this episode. I can certainly talk about the Pacific for hours. If you remember,
you'll get a chance because we are going to do an episode about
the 10-year anniversary. Julia is in March. Yeah, I know it's crazy. Madness. I hate to tell you, but yeah, it is. It's in March.
Yeah, because we're Mexican Mike, Pat, and I were talking about it, and I definitely want to host one or two of the episodes. And have
There's one little moment that I really think we missed a bet that I wanted to do so bad, which is, if you remember in points, there's the guy he doesn't have enough points to go, and he's got to go to the Pacific, right? If in Okinawa, it'd have to be the end of the war, but if somewhere in Okinawa, in the background, he walked by and said, "Reporting for duty, sir," and just kept walking, would have been so awesome. Tie those two together, because they're supposed to be taking place in the same world.
Sure, yeah.
Like, none of the actors could be retreads or anything because they were busy in Europe. Yeah. So that I think that was such a missed moment for the fans.
And a true scene. The Stephen Ambrose actually wrote about it in the book. Dick Winters did go to divisional, and he talked to a general who was there and like scoping things out, and he said, look, I'm ready to go now. I'm not any better than anybody else. I have a mom, but I don't have children and stuff. I'm ready to go. And the general told him, look, I think you've done your part. I think your men have earned to keep you here. And what they didn't put in the show, which was true, and frankly, they need to be trained because all the paratroopers are going. We need seasoned warriors. So those guys, we see that through with the eyes, right, of 60 at the time, 60 years now, 75 years, 80 years later. But those guys were really thinking, can you imagine having 110 points and going, but I'm still going to go to the Pacific. I'm still going to train, and I might be on a ship in 75, 80 days, because they knew they'd probably get 30 days leave, and they knew that they'd have to be retrained and reprocessed and get some new gear and stuff. But they still knew they were going. I mean, that's terrifying, right?
Yeah, my father was a pilot in World War II in Europe, and he, at the end of his, as the war in Europe was cooling down, he was certain he was going to be sent to the Pacific, and he was certain he was going to die. Right. So he got ahead of it and volunteered for the ferry service, and ferried planes back and forth. And didn't end up going to the Pacific.
What did he?
but
What did he
he'd
fly?
already gotten, he'd already made points so many times, but every time he got like one away, they'd up it.
What did he fly in Europe?
B-24 Liberators, mostly in Italy.
Jesus,
15th Air Force.
that's some scary stuff right there.
Yes, indeed.
Hold on. I did a portrait of her dad.
Oh yes, you did a
I'm
beautiful
going to
one.
pull it up here. So,
Oh yay!
Matt, that show's being made right now for Apple TV.
Oh,
It
right
is
on.
not. It is the
Oh.
8th Air Force, which is just frustrating.
Oh, is it? Oh,
My
I'm sorry to
dad said-
hear that. I'm excited about the show, but I'm sorry to hear that for you. Oh, what a bummer. Okay.
My dad used to sing all the time. He said, "It's just the same old story. The 8th gets all the glory." Nobody cares about the 15th. So finally, we're doing pilots, and no, can't be my dad. There he is.
Oh, right
Hi,
on.
Mom.
That's pretty cool.
That
That's
is
a
really
portrait I
cool.
did of
That's
her
a
dad.
good. That's well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good looking
Yeah, I
fella.
don't suck as an artist, so I hear.
No.
I do not have the hand-eye coordination. It never comes out what I see in my brain.
It's a mixture of airbrushing and pen and ink.
Cool. Right on.
There we
Hi,
go.
Dad. He's my total hero. He's a fabulous, fabulous man. I was so lucky to have him in my life.
And you're working on the new show?
Yeah, from Los Angeles.
Yeah, yeah.
We can't have a big crew. There was 13 of us on the Pacific, and there's 2.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Is that-
And that is because of Brexit and immigration and COVID and everything. I mean, it's just so
Yeah,
complicated.
the whole
So
Koof thing has
It-
caused so many problems.
it's fine. I've got more than enough to do, and he's got more than enough to do. But
Are you guys
Yeah.
getting to work with just one main source piece this time? Because
I think
I
we're
was
gonna
reading
not
t-
talk about this anymore. Okay.
oh, fair enough. But what I-
All
but
right.
what I-
Let's abandon that subject. Pull
But
the
what
chute.
I can say is, and I will say this so Julia doesn't have to say it, is just as I recommended for Band of Brothers that you should absolutely read Stephen Ambrose's book, you should read Dick Winter's book that he did, but also a gentleman who was very overlooked and did not get published, but was a pretty standout character. And episode 9 was based around him. David Webster did a book called Parachute Infantry. And I highly recommend that book. A lot of sources were taken for that episode from him. And I think, frankly, 2 of the best books written about World War II, certainly in the Pacific Theater and about the Marine Corps in general, were A Helmet for My Pillow and With the Old Breed, which were the 2 books that were the main source materials for the Pacific. Great books,
Sledge
great World
and
War II books,
Lucky.
great, honorable, written by gentlemen who were both represented in the show, but were enlisted in the Marine Corps, and just they're phenomenal, and written very timely, right? Only like I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Julia. With the Old Breed was written only about 7 or 8 years after the war, right? And
yeah, you got remember these guys. They carried pen and paper with them everywhere. They were writing it while they were there.
Yeah, these were educated men that enlisted. Many of them, because they were young, there was no even consideration of trying to go to ROTC or become an officer and stuff. They just wanted to get in there, So yeah, they were young guys, but they were in many cases educated or natural writers. And yeah, it took, if not real notes, mental notes. As a matter of fact, I think it was Eugene Sledge had even got kind of like, hey man, you can't keep a notebook. If you get captured or something, you can't have where we've been, and it's not a good idea, kind of thing. So
And I've always felt bad for James Jones, who wrote the Thin Red Line and From Here to Eternity, because he was only there for like one thing that happened when he was there, which was Pearl Harbor. And he was always like arriving after shit happened. And I always felt bad for him because he would write these great books, but he was writing from the perspective of the guy that just got there after all the shit went down.
Yeah. Well, I tell you though, if you got to visit Guadalcanal, I would highly recommend visiting Guadalcanal after the early 40s, because maybe Okinawa, right, might have been the only place where Guadalcanal, everybody thinks of like these gritty, sandy beaches and these dug-in tunnels. Guadalcanal was about as close to jungle warfare as possible, and a lot of guys who were higher-ranking officers, right, by the time Vietnam came around, that were at Guadalcanal said this is very reminiscent of what we fought in, and those guys were invaluable in training troops, especially reconnaissance troops and stuff. during those times that very much played into that. So it's always it always shows it's good to keep seasoned people around that have fought. It's not just because they have combat experience, but they have experience that could play into many aspects of it.
For sure. And when we were in Iraq doing house to house, they'll come in and talk about clearing houses from away. Because that was the house to house that had done before. He doesn't call it Mout, he calls it fish fighting in someone's house.
I like that.
Like, just say what it is. But yeah, so
we called it Mout and CQB.
Yep.
And
he just likes fish.
I always got stuck because as a medic, they always protected me. I'd end up 4th or 5th man in the stack. You know, they always kept me in the back, but they'd let me be a part of stuff. I love that.
Right.
Nice.
Do you identify with that medic episode then? The one that's at Battle of the Bulge?
Yeah. Oh, fuck.
That's a hell of an episode, yeah.
Because people go, oh, did you, you went in the Army and became a medic. It's like, no, I went into the Army expressly to be a medic. Because I wanted to be a hospital corpsman, but I wasn't guaranteed anything above 20% chance of being a corpsman for the Marines. I said, that's the best you could do. Because I kept thinking, this recruiter should fucking lie to me. And I was put down in the Navy.
It's weird because they very often do.
All
due respect to the military, they sell you a good story.
Yeah, he did not. He was honest. And so I'm like, I'm going Army. I do not want to be on a ship or a port or any of that fucking shit.
There was a few years ago, we went to Bastogne in December for the anniversary and did some signings, and fans were there. Yeah. You know, it's in the middle of nowhere. People were taking 8-hour bus rides to come where we were. It was really awesome. But one of the places we did a signing was this old church building, and I was with the actor who played Doc Rowe, and he's awesome. He's one of my favorite people. And we were just sitting there talking, and we just realized this is the building we were in was the hospital.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
I do have a question for you, Julia.
We live in this. Wild. Yes.
That's wild.
He's one of the few people that if I ever flip to the other team, he would definitely be on the list of guys I would sleep with. Is Damian Lewis as dreamy in person?
Yes. I would say that.
Little reluctant.
I fucking love that guy. He is absolutely one of the best actors going today.
He's pretty cut in billions. If you that scene where he takes his shirt off is like season 2 or 3.
My favorite thing with him was the show he did, Life, where he's a guy that was wrongly
that was great. 2 seasons.
Back to his job as a cop. Fucking awesome show. And he's really, him and Donnie Wahlberg are the only 2 things I enjoyed about that stupid movie Dreamcatcher.
There's not much to like about Dreamcatcher, but
it's just a dumb movie.
Is Tom Jane in that?
Yes, he is. Thomas Jane is in
wow. God, Matt is like the
I don't know.
Hollywood historian. That's incredible.
But like, can somebody make a movie that actually is like the book or something? I mean, the movies are so atrocious.
Well, exactly.
No, let's not even talk about The Dark Tower, which was like some of the most awesome literature ever.
Right. Yeah, I didn't see it. It sounded like it flopped, and
I
don't. If you don't satisfy the fans, I don't of the IP. I mean, the only reason this thing is marketable to begin with, if you don't satisfy them, I don't know how you expect the thing to work.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Good luck.
And they could have done one tiny twist, and it would have worked perfectly.
Really? That's it? Just that?
The storyline is about cycles and things repeating themselves, and all they had to do was say this was one of the cycles of the Dark Tower, but it's not the story. It's one of the side spins of time.
Right.
And have it be set in the world, but not the exact story of, 16 books that are this big in an hour and a half.
Sure. Yeah.
And that.
Frankly, it needs to be a television series with about 3 or 4 seasons, if you want to, maybe even 7, one for each book. So, but to get back to both the actors, and the Band of Brothers themselves, I think some important things to point out historically. The scene, I was fascinated to find this out. I researched the scene about 3 or 4 days ago because I was like, how real is this? the scene where Sergeant Grant gets shot.
Mhm.
It starts. It's a really, when you think of it production wise, brilliant, right? They started kind of midstream, so you
Mhm.
kind of get that. You're very much seeing this from Grant's point of view, right? He wanders upon this, but that actually did happen, right? There was a guy from, I think he was from I Company,
Mhm.
had
A
gotten
new guy.
drunk
He had just gotten there.
and was loaded on at least marijuana. They said it may be something else, and he had shot a British officer and a warrant officer and killed them. And Sergeant Grant and I was trying to. Do you remember who else was in the Jeep with him? There's at least one other guy, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
there's
Can't
two
think of
other
it.
guys.
But
Weren't
he
there?
actually did take
Yes, we were.
No.
a shot to the top of his head like that. They did eventually catch the guy. Ronald Spears did go and find a German neurosurgeon. Saved Grant's life. Grant lived for many decades past. He always had. So he could never serve again, and
Right,
he
right.
was and he ailed, and it caused him constant problems. Not a lot of pain, fortunately, but I think he had some paralysis in his left side or something like that.
Jesus.
And Ronald Spears didn't kill him, and Carlwood Lipton asked him many years later, where they were sitting around having a dinner after one of their many reunions. He's like, he always called him Cap, even though as Spears left as a lieutenant colonel. He's like, Cap, I never did understand, why didn't you shoot that guy? I mean, he says, Lip, I never had a problem with capital punishment. He said, but thinking back now, there must have been something in my mind that maybe not 100% sure that this happened the way this guy said and everything at the time. So I didn't
Due
do it. But
process.
even they say even Colonel Sink said you should have just shot the son of a bitch, and it made it easier on everybody. And that gentleman did. He actually even got transferred back to the States and went to a real Maxim's security penitentiary. So I don't know if he actually served life in prison, but he served a significant amount of time in prison.
Well, you'll find
So-
with federal and military, they have harsh sentences for shit like that.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
a great sequence in the show too. I just finished it a few hours ago, and it's just when Spears just backhands him with the butt of that pistol. When you talk to an officer, you say, "Sir." It's so intense. It's like, God, he's just his arms shaking. You think he's really gonna blow that guy's head off. It was a great. I mean, it's just so messed up that happened, and that these guys are still getting popped after all they've been through, and like this drunk asshole.
And that was terrible. But even the thing with Janovich, right, who was Tom Hardy, that guy was only in 2 or 3 episodes, and they said that they really wanted that in there, and it was through it appears that that David Webbs was there when that actually did happen, because there's just not a lot known about Private Janovich in real life, right? He was a guy, he joined up. He doesn't seem like he had a lot of family. He did come back home afterwards. His body was repatriated. As some of you know, I'm sure, but if you don't know, Graves Registry after World War II, if you were buried in Europe or overseas anywhere, right, even in the Pacific Theater, you had pretty much 3 choices. Your family could either bring you back home and have you buried privately, like in a family plot or something like that. You could request that you be buried in a national cemetery, and certainly if you had honors and stuff, Arlington was not out of the question. Or you could stay over there, and he had enough family that they actually had him come home, and he's buried in his hometown. And after Band of Brothers, the town was kind of like, we really should find out more about him. And even they had a hard time, right, finding out about this gentleman. So it's good that they had some source material, because that's a guy who probably, he served all the way from the beginning, right? He was there in Georgia training with them all the way to the end, didn't quite make it home. And that's a story that would have been lost to history if it wasn't for the show and the writings of Daniel Webster and some of the records that Winters kept. It's a real testament. It kind of almost encapsulates this whole thing that everybody, and I told Gerry this and Matt this too, I said, I want to talk about the veterans, but I wanted to talk about the production of this. And Julia, you coming in at the end, it just really encapsulates that for me, which is everybody that was involved in this really cares. there's a lot about Hollywood we don't like, right? I mean, their politics are not my politics, and I'll just leave it at that. But I will say this: the people, it seems like Tom Hanks, and we know your husband cares. I mean, that's obvious. But it seemed to me that even winning over a lot of those actors, those guys must have felt something, because you don't stay friends with an old veteran in Philadelphia, right? Like the guy that played Babe Heffron did with the real life Babe Heffron. If you don't feel that camaraderie, if you don't feel that respect. So it has to be a real tangible thing. And I just wanted to get that across, because when you do something that's caring and loving, and you like the source material and you like the story, and it's a true story, you honor it, you get, if you're very, very lucky, something almost as good as Band of Brothers as The Pacific, if you're really lucky,
Yeah.
And yes, Dave Bob, I thought that baseball game, whether that was true or not, which I don't know if it was or it wasn't, if they really did come and announce victory over Japan at the time, but what a great ending. What a great ending. Do you know how that came about, Julia? Was that a big production decision, or?
Well, they did play games, so it's certainly plausible. It was a way to have everybody together and yet be doing something, so it's not just boring, headshots of people. So there were, and baseball is about as American a thing, and that's what people did, right? So all of those things are credibly true, shall we say. I think the interesting thing about it was how few of them knew how to actually play baseball.
That's hilarious.
That is
like you just assume it's like second nature, right? I mean,
right. Except most of them were British actors, so they were, throwing cricket pitches, and they didn't know the game. So fortunately, Neil McDonough did know baseball, and that's why he's the catcher. And
they had to stop production to do a baseball boot camp, and then they could pick it back up.
There was a period of military instruction on the game of baseball.
Spring training.
That's hilarious. Well, it's also efficient.
I want to go on again. This guy was potential material for the pros. He was that good as a young man, and he had multiple scholarship offers for baseball from colleges around the U.S. Turned them all down because he wanted to learn to be an actor and went to Syracuse.
It worked out. He's in one of the greatest shows of all time.
But he still played baseball, and baseball got him his first job. Playing the outfielder in Angels in the Outfield.
Right. It's been very, very good to him.
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
Absolutely.
But also, he's another one that's dreamy. I have a big man crush on Neil McDonough.
Eyes.
It's interesting because a lot of the actors.
I've never met his wife, Reve. She is awesome.
I love that they're devoutly Catholic. I love that. That he has never lost.
Like all the actors, they not only lived through the war, right? That they came back and they all had babies. Like it was like within a year. It was like you didn't have to do the baby boom too.
I'd say the Band of Brothers boomers.
When there's a reunion, the kids are like a year older and they're all exactly the same height.
It's hysterical.
Really
Storyman Jack, welcome to the show, my friend. He is another military veteran buddy of mine.
Hail.
And he's a very good writer.
Right on.
So welcome to chat, my friend.
Good stuff.
We're coming down to the last 12 minutes of the show. And I'm done. No.
Cutting out early.
I kind of want to go over the fact that one of the things that impressed me about this show is that Tom Hanks, and I've got a lot of reasons. Julia knows why I really like Tom Hanks. And one of them is because even though it's not made yet, and I still have faith that it'll eventually happen, No Better Place to Die. I got to do the storyboards and some production art for that, and I designed the logo for this film. And I want to tell this real quick because it's funny. When Tom Hanks stepped in as a producer on it was on Valentine's Eve when I found out about it. And I went, oh, so I went to bed. And I woke up Valentine's Day. And I'm like, yeah, Tom Hanks is a producer on No better place to die. What will be, hopefully, in my opinion, the best World War II film ever made when it gets made.
Percani's in it.
And
I just
and
Googled it.
then
Percani's in it. That's
I
awesome.
went to bed on Valentine's night, and I woke up the next day, and this is really because Julia, you don't know this story. I woke up just like this. I work for Tom Hanks. And I'm serious. I woke up just like, oh my God, this changes everything. I'm like, oh my God, this is, and go look on my portfolio resume page. Is it even mentioned there? No. Because I'm a dumbass.
You don't want to brag. You got to stay humble in this
Tom
business,
Hanks
you know?
I have such an adoration of that guy. Because and I'm not going to slag on Spielberg or any of those guys on the show. I just know where Tom Hanks' heart is. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it time and time again that he uses these platforms, these films, to do something that's even better than the film that caused it to happen. Of course, in this case, it's Saving Private Ryan, whom you know how I feel about that film, Julia. I've made fun of so much of the stuff that Dale wasn't involved with, that Spielberg does not know how to fucking tell a story, doesn't understand irony.
Jesus.
He's just
one of the most acclaimed directors in history. This guy's like, no, he's.
I remember sitting with my vet buddies, seeing that fucking movie, and all of us laughing, and one of them yelling out, hey, why don't you talk real loudly in the combat zone? Good idea. Get on that guy yelling about saluting the captain when he's got fucking captain's bars on his helmet. Good job. Just, all the vets around us were laughing. We were in there with a lot of vets. And it was funny because, like, at certain points, they were all outside smoking because they couldn't handle certain scenes in the film.
I will say, my impression of the whole Private Ryan to Band of Brothers evolution is that I think they took a lot of the lessons that they learned on Private Ryan.
That's exactly what they did. But Tom Hanks also did something else. He took a true story.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, that's what I was going to get at.
He took a true story.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I don't want to say that the film was badly cast, because actually there's really good actors in that movie, Saving Private Ryan. But the casting for Band of Brothers is so much better. It's a perfect cast.
That's different when you got the real people. I mean, when you're playing real characters. I mean, that's the thing why I definitely prefer Band of Brothers to Private Ryan.
I consider that very difficult, finding the right actors to play real people.
It is hard, but you got to understand too. I mean, you're talking about telling a story in 2 hours versus 10 hours.
That's
it's
true.
It's different. You know, you could take a photograph of a painting, and is the photograph better than the painting? Or you know, it's all convoluted.
Right.
I have things about Saving Private Ryan that I quibble with, and that I could, but does it matter?
Not really.
It holds up.
Right.
And it was important for its time. When it came out, and that opening sequence of Normandy, and we'd never seen anything that graphic, that realistic ever, it really made an impact on culture and history, and it's a very important movie. I'm not negating
and on
it.
filmmaking.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's so.
And I will say this about veterans there, and this is true. They did, because I saw it like the second night it came out. They did do the, hey, if anybody gets upset and has to leave, and you're sitting there and you're like, oh, this is ridiculous. But you know what? Sure enough, there's an old guy who's sitting there. I don't know if he was a World War II veteran or not. In '98, it's very possible. He got up with his son, and he had to walk out of the theater and leave.
Well, that's why all the guys were outside smoking.
Yeah.
Because the combat scenes got so intense, they had to leave.
Right.
Yeah, and they're unforgiving. It's unforgiving. It's a brutal, I don't know how long it is, 25 minutes.
The thing is, it goes on for 20 minutes of this intense, horrific, and you can't hardly stand it. And how do you... Those guys would have been overjoyed if they only had to be there for 20 minutes.
Right.
Like, we can't stand 20 minutes of pretending.
Right. Great point.
So, I don't know, it says
and it matters. That does matter. And I think that's why it's like they took the lessons they learned on how to make that excellent, and they put even more into the next iteration, which is the true story, which is, you know, like a group of heroes, band of brothers.
And he did this again. Previously he did it with Apollo 13, and then From the Earth to the Moon.
Earth to the Moon.
Yeah, he made
Hanks
Apollo
is,
13. What are you saying?
Hanks
Spielberg
is a sharp
sucks.
dude. What's that?
I say, what are you saying? Spielberg sucks. He made Apollo 13. That movie rules. It's a
That's
great
Ron
movie.
Howard.
Yeah,
Oh, that's right. It's
I
Ron
don't think
Howard.
Spielberg was involved in it. I think you're thinking
No,
Tom
yeah.
Hey,
Hanks'
before
brother.
you correct me, motherfucker,
Yeah.
you better know your directors.
Good point. Valid point. Yeah.
But,
Jaws?
And it's,
Huh?
you know, I mean, there's always a challenge when fictionalizing real life stories, and things do get changed because you have to have story arcs and you have to have characters that get from A to B, and things have to happen a certain way. I have that problem sometimes in my publishing hat when people will send me their memoirs of their combat experience, and it's just everything could have been great, but they don't know how to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
So it reads like I went to the grocery store and then I went to
Sure.
pick up my dry cleaning. You know, it's just really episodic stuff. So how do you take that and still make it an amazing experience in entertainment?
Yeah.
We
Because
talked that-
that's what people are paying for, and that's what they want to go, is to have this experience.
Yeah, me
How
and Pat
do
were
you
talking
get this
about
out
that
there?
just the other day when we did was it episode 8? We did,
Yes, sir.
yeah, and it was, and it covered, and it was like, well, this didn't factually happen. You know what I mean? Lieutenant Jones didn't go on that mission. Webster wasn't really that ostracized from the company, but it mattered to tell the story portraying it that way. So that, like you said, the emotional resonance carries as much weight. It's like, yeah, I mean, if you want facts, read a history book, but it's like, it's a, you know, if, you know what I mean? Like, not to besmirch it, but it's just like it.
Right.
This is storytelling. It is a movie.
But we want
essentially.
people to read history. See, we Warriors Inc. has an absolute mission, okay, and that is to educate the American people on the profession of arms, and that we absolutely will do anything possible to get that education out there. And popular culture is an amazing way of doing that. So you say, go read a history book if you want the real story. That's what we want them to do.
Right.
We want them to say, wow, this was amazing. I'd like to
Sure.
know more about this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like the Medal of Honor video game series, the reward for finishing a level was to watch a documentary, a short documentary about
Right.
what really happened. And the kids were like, I get to watch a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Well, haha. You would have gotten to watch that last week.
We tricked you.
But whatever can be done to make it so that you are thirsting for more information is a win in my book.
Here, here.
Medal of Honor, Rising Sun is an awesome game, and everybody should play it just so they can see the cutscenes.
And
Yeah,
that game was pretty much formed on the beaches shooting the scene from Normandy. By Spielberg.
Not Rising Sun, but
no,
the first one.
that was the
First
one
Medal of
before
Honor.
Rising Sun, which was also a awesome game.
Great game.
Gerry, would it be okay if we wound it
No.
up if I did a couple of thank yous? And okay, well, sorry guys.
Yeah, do whatever you want.
All right, well, it's been real.
Go right ahead, Pat.
Well, first of all, Julia, thank you. Gerry said he could get you, and I believed him because my friend Mike, Mexican Iron Man, said Gerry doesn't make stuff up. He talks like somebody who makes stuff up, but he's a very honest, forthright guy. And I was like, okay, so I'm sure Julia Dye will show up then. And sure enough, you showed up, and we appreciate it. We appreciate your husband, but we appreciate you too. Your contribution that you've made is just as big in many ways, and we really, really appreciate it. But we really, really love him too, and we love him for his service. So
Well, she loves
Absolutely.
that people love Dale Dye.
good.
Of course.
Well, how can you not? And Gerry, I want to say thank you too. We really were racking our brain. How do we wrap this up? What can we get something big? We were trying to get one of the actors from the shows who are actually really good guys and maybe even a family member. But when you came up with this a week and a half ago, I'm like, I'm going to stop looking. It doesn't get much better than this. This is somebody who's met all these people, both real, and that's perfect. Let's run with that. So you and your friend who's producing the Kyle, who's producing tonight, thank you so much for bringing us together, buddy. You did a
You bet,
lot.
man.
Lord Toth, you've been with us the whole way. Matt, I said earlier in the chat, and I really do mean this, Foulball Productions, buddy, you and yours, which is mostly you, really has been, you encouraged this. You were the first person outside of the Mexican Iron Man family to sign on, and he loves you, and he wanted me to tell you that. He loves Foulball Productions. He loves what you guys do. He said, keep it up, and I think we all feel the same way. And I want to thank everybody else, and I mentioned a lot of them earlier. If I forgot anybody, Purple Valkyrie, Loki's Mornings of Mischief, you guys, GoGo 13 has been there, has helped bring educate people, told people how to watch the show, has been wonderful. Certainly Nick from Echo Based Network and Echo Based TV, their new little joint is doing great. Paulie, Latino Slant, Paulie, I think really, Paulie was lucky to be fourth, so he kind of saw what worked and what needed to be tweaked. Had a great episode that really set the tone for the rest of the series, and people lived up to it. I think I said Purple Valkyrie already, but if I didn't, let's say her twice, because she's done so much behind the scenes and kicking this off that we really appreciated. Our buddy Dave Bob, that 70s rock fan, even though you didn't host, joining us with just another red shirt. You guys have always been there encouraging us and just bringing a ton of knowledge. And Zaxxon, Brightest Day, and anybody else that I'm forgetting. Matt, if you think of anybody I'm forgetting, I appreciate you throwing it out there. But all you guys, and if I forgot anybody in the chat, those of you that have been with us the whole time, thanks so much. And yes, people have been DMing me, asking me on the slide, asking me in chat.
We have 245 watching us right now.
Very nice.
Okay.
Very nice.
Please, and if you're wondering, will we be doing something about the Pacific? Yes, I said earlier in the thing, if you're just joining us late, that March is the 10-year anniversary, and I want to honor that in the same way we did with this. And we're gonna work on the things that we're gonna make better, what we didn't get great, and we're gonna continue to build on the things that we did. And a lot of the faces that you got to know here and are now liking and subscribing to, hopefully, and joining, because we're all a family. Please do that. There are a lot of the faces you're going to see again, and I'm going to try to make some room for some other people, because there are people who, it's not because they love me. It might be because they love Mike.
No, we don't like you, Matt.
But they love this stuff. They love military history. They love these movies. They love these series. They're the best done military productions, I think. So if you see the Die name on there, you could pretty much say this is going to be something worth spending time with. And I appreciate it. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Gerry. And anything you want to add and plug, buddy, please, it's your channel. So feel free to do it, because
I think you did all the dick sucking that needed to be done.
Great. Good thing I have a big bottle of water here. So
watch it down. Oh my God.
But Matt, you're still going tonight, right?
That's right. MFR Cocktail Lounge starts at 9:30 Central. About an hour and a half from now. It's a good time. A little more vulgar, a little more more of a hang show, but it's a good time. You guys, if anyone wants to come check us out, we usually follow up right after Friday Night Tights.
Saying dick sucking's not vulgar enough for you, Matt?
Good point. Yeah, good point. Yeah, we'll get into that too. But come check us out. That's really fun. And I want to say there's some people here from my show the other night that donated some money to the Gary Sinise Foundation. So I just want to say thank you for that. That was really generous of you guys. So I appreciate that we could do that. Hey, they did it. Thank you. And that's it. That's all.
Well, I want to thank both you guys for being here. And Julie, of course, thank you so much. I finally got you on the show. I'm so happy.
Well, it's just nobody ever wants to talk to me.
I always want to talk to you.
Call me because you hook me up with Dale, I did. Thanks for having me.
I do think it would be a good idea to try to do a proper retrospective of the Pacific. And I think that we plan it a little bit better and have both the dies on there and any of the cadre that they want to bring on that worked on it, as well as we should look, because I like that kid, the one from Jurassic Park. Good actor. He did a great job.
Yeah, he was good. And
he's cute as a button, but yeah. But he's really good in the film and the show. And I really love the Pacific. Now, unlike others, I preferred Band of Brothers over the Pacific, but damn it, I still love the Pacific. They're
two different shows for two different theaters.
Different shows, two different
branches,
two different aspects of the same war.
Yeah, they're very different, but they both have places in my heart.
Yeah,
absolutely. And Julia, is there anything from you that you would like to recommend, or that we could buy from you or your husband to help support? Any good books? Buy some DVDs.
Publishing.
Dale is a prolific writer, and he writes whenever he can between shooting. His latest book is called Korean Odyssey, and it's about the Korean War. It's a fiction adventure novel set there, and it comes out this December. So it's up for pre-sale now if you want to. So
Awesome.
Korean Odyssey
Christmas.
by Dale Dye.
Just in time for
And-
Christmas, yeah.
Yeah, and that's, I think, his 14th book. So if you like good
Wow.
military fiction,
Yeah, he's prolific.
there you go.
And of course, this is the website to buy their
There's the book.
books. Hey, there's some beautiful
That's the
artwork.
book right
Who
there.
did that?
That is nice.
That's wild. That's 14
All of this
bucks.
artwork looks so amazing. Who did all this artwork? Anyway, actually,
There's
this is
some
a
gorgeous
Iraq
covers.
War buddy of mine that posed for that. John Andrews. He fought in the Battle of Mosul.
Wow.
It's a great cover.
This is their website. It's warriorspublishing.com.
Nice.
Go there. There's a cool cover I did for Dale's book. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's his whole file series and plus several others. Probably Run Between the Raindrops, his Vietnam story, is the one we get requested most often. But you can also find 13th Valley from Del Vecchio. We've got some really, really good titles.
Great.
Try to really focus
Awesome.
on the best of military fiction and nonfiction. So check us out.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and with that, I guess I'll play our little outro. You can stick around for another couple minutes, Julia. We'll usually talk after the show. But I want to thank everybody in the audience, everybody in the chat for coming and watching the show. And I'm going to go out the way I always go out with my favorite scene from a movie. With that, see you next time. We'll be back next Friday for the special Halloween episode featuring Lady in White. Ooh. So, all right, we're going to fuck off now.
Goodbye, Chocolate Mousse. I'll never forget you. Goodbye, Ducroix. Take care of yourself. Goodbye, Deja Vu. I'll always remember you. And I'll miss you most of all, Scarecrow.